Hi, and welcome to On the Spot. My name is Ronnie Wiley. To my left is Sheila Hupp.
Hello,
Sheila,
sir.
you're a life coach.
I am, sir.
Absolutely. You know, I've heard of what life coaches are. We're going to find out today exactly what a life coach is. Tell us what you do.
Well, I love to help other people get from where they are to where they want to go. Oftentimes we get stuck in a rut and we're so busy that we just spin our wheels in that rut and we don't ever get out. And what a life coach does is it helps. It helps them just take a minute and really think about where you are.
Right.
What are some obstacles that you're facing and what are some opportunities, and pull, some of the strings and the knots and untangle them so that you can finally have just a minute to think about where you would like to be. And a life coach provides just that opportunity to partner on finding what that route is and getting that person there.
When you talk to somebody, do they have to know exactly where they want to be, or can they you see potential?
Absolutely. Well, what it is, we're in this really fast-paced world. And so we might have these fleeting thoughts that, oh, I wish I was doing this, or I wish this worked better, or I wish that we would, have this type of budget, whatever that is. But those thoughts just pop into our minds and then they kind of go somewhere else because we're on to the next thing. And then what happens is people finally get to a point where they're exhausted. And then they seek the help of a coach, or they meet someone who has these services and sits down for just a minute. And I offer, free samples. And so they'll say, okay, well, let me give this a try. And just by sitting down for just a minute, just kind of blessing themselves with that time to just take a breath and think, then they're able to really see where they would like to be. And then we kind of reverse engineer it. We say, okay, well, in order to get to that point, what's got to change?
Time, you mentioned time, just to bless themselves with that time.
Yes.
When you mentioned time, I heard someone say one time that money and gold is not as precious as time, because time's the only thing you could never, ever get back of once you lose it.
Yep.
And you talked about the blessing of time. Is that what you try to teach people, is to utilize their time the most?
Lately, that is what I'm doing a lot of. I have been teaching a class called Mama Needs a Minute. And even in the title, we're talking about time. And it's something that I am working on myself, as well as teaching my clients, is to utilize time and think about it like we do our money. How do we invest it to get the best return? What are we spending our time on that's going to help us out, especially as moms? Like, I have 3 young children, and my time is precious. So what am I investing my time on that's going to reward us down the road? And
you say us, it's not just you.
Yep.
So let's get to when you were a kid, when you were younger, and what motivated you as a child to eventually get to where you're at now?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. Well, when I was younger, I wanted to do a million different things, but I was always an encourager. I always enjoyed helping other people reach their goals, or kind of cheering people along. I'm an only child, and I imagine that's where it came from, just wanting to be a part of something with someone else, and working with different people in my school and helping them and encouraging them to do different things. So as I look back, I can see that encouraging part has always probably been a part of my personality.
And how old were you when you decided to pursue the career that you're at now?
Well, this is actually, a different career path than what I started in. Long before children, long before I was married, I worked in local government.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
wow.
and I loved that.
You need to be an encourager there, I think.
And I loved it, and that's what all of my degrees are in.
What did you do in the government?
Well, I was part of a management operations team for a large city in Texas. I'm not from Connorsville. I am from the Dallas, Texas area, and I worked for the city of Irving. And I was very fortunate to be able to work with the city manager and the leadership team there to be a part of a management operations team, where we would actually just kind of be deployed into different areas of the government to help with certain projects or to develop things that helped out with the growth of the city.
Wow, so you learned you got to be pretty much encouraging to be in the government with lots of things going on, I would imagine. So let's go back even further. So when you're a kid, you're a little girl, and I have a few friends of mine that are only children, and one thing that seems to be a common theme with them is that they had a lot of time to be alone, with their thoughts and very unique perspective on things. Whereas I had a sister, cousins and everything. Is that where you learned to value time? Was back then when you had time to be alone?
I probably not, because I've always been pretty bad with time. I haven't always been the best with time, but
I'm not very good
but what it did is I think that it helped me see what I could do in a certain amount of time, and it made me want to achieve and want to get tasks done, and how to just kind of use my time to get certain things done so that it was all wrapped up by the end of the day. So with not having as many distractions as someone with siblings, now that I can see my 3 young daughters fighting and procrastinating together, and I call it dilly-dallying, I didn't really have anyone to be my partner in crime in any of that. So then I was able to see what I could accomplish in a day.
Is that the encouragement come from your parents? Were they encouragers to you?
Oh, yes. My mom always encouraged me to kind of go after what I wanted and not to pay any attention to like naysayers or any obstacles, to just stay focused. Yes.
So you're down in Dallas, Texas. You're down in the urban area, which we had talked before that I wanted to go to Wiley, Texas, which is sort of around there because they spell their name. They spell that just like mine.
Yes.
Connorsville's got to be far from your mind when you're down there working and in a position you're at there. Tell us how you got from Dallas, Texas, Irving, to where you're at now.
Well, it all started with a boyfriend.
It always starts with a boy, right?
That's
boy
right.
or girl? Yeah.
That's right, yeah. So my husband, his parents live in College Corner, but he was down in Texas. And we met and got married and then eventually moved up here. So now we live closer to my in-laws.
Wow, so what brought you guys up here?
Well, my husband worked with his parents.
Oh, okay.
And so it kind of just moved us, incrementally up from Dallas. We lived in Kentucky for a little bit, and then now we live in Connorsville.
Yeah. So you're here now, and obviously you're not just, okay, I'm going to be here, I'm just going to be a citizen and work. You want to make an impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We love Connorsville, and we really love the way that it feels. We love the pace, we love the people, we love where we live physically, we love the environment. And just as I have gotten to know people, and as my daughters are getting older, I can see many needs, not only in women my age and beyond, but also in the younger generations, that it's harder to just appreciate our femininity. It's harder to kind of embrace the way God made us and kind of own that. And I would love to just help women of all ages, from the youngest, like my daughters, all the way up to like empty nesters and women who are retired, to just really embrace where God has placed them and how He made them.
That's very important. So tell us about your relationship with God and how He brought you into this line of work.
Absolutely, and that definitely plays a huge part in it. I was going through a really hard time, and as a stay-at-home homeschool mom, I didn't have a lot of time to go out and talk to friends or, go see a counselor. Unfortunately, I started listening to podcasts about how to, get out of situations that are kind of hurting you and breaking your heart. And so I remember just rocking my youngest when she was a baby, just listening to these about how, circumstances are going to be hard. Life is going to throw us some pretty steep curveballs sometimes, but the way that we think about it and meditate on it really makes an impact on how we grow through it. Because we have to go through these hard times regardless. We don't get to hit a fast forward button.
It's amazing you say that, because people assume because you have a relationship with God that your life should be perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just not the case. It's a fallen world we live in, and it's how you handle it and who you look to.
Exactly. Yeah, troubles are going to come no matter what. No matter if you are a believer in Jesus or whomever, no one is immune. No belief that we have deep down in our soul is going to scotch guard us against problems. And what we can do is create habits that help us when those times come. Our church right now at Connorsville Baptist Temple, we're going through the book, The Red Sea Rules. And that is 10 rules that Robert Morgan put together that really show how the Israelites came through when they were really just kind of blocked in. The Egyptians were at one side, they were surrounded by mountains on the other, and there was a huge Red Sea behind them, and how God provided a way out that they could have never imagined. And if we use that as, just almost like a family history manual, and we can say, God has brought us through so many things. If we can even just look back in our lives at how God has brought us through things that we never thought we would survive, then we can just stand more firm in our faith that when another obstacle comes, that we're going to get through that as well. It may not be pretty, it may not be, it may not be fun, and we may, regret every moment and hate it, but we're going to get through and we're going to be stronger on the other side. And that's why I really like working with moms, and I like to help them.
Because you're a mom.
I am a mom, and it's like my most favorite job that I've ever had.
Probably the hardest.
And the hardest, yes, because it's not like when you're working.
I like the Brady Bunch.
That's right.
Even that's a fun show.
I don't have Alice, I don't have her. But when, when you're a mom, you get so excited, but coming from a job where if you did a good job, then you would get, a good performance review, or you would get a raise, or at least your boss would be like, that's awesome, you did great. Like your baby is not going to give you a high five, when you wipe their tushy really well, right? Like they're
hey, thanks, Mom.
Exactly. And so it's wonderful. And yes, there are rewards, but you can get really down in the mundane. You really can. And that's kind of my passion, is to work with moms and help them see the beauty in that, and then also help them to not forget about themselves in that as well, so that not only are they more fulfilled in their motherhood, but their children get to see them as this whole human, not just mom who brings the juice boxes and snacks, but mom loved to run, or mom loved to read books all by herself. And they get to see that, because that really impacts the adult that they will become as well.
You talk about how the kids view the parents, and I remember my mom and dad got divorced when I don't really remember them being married, but because they were raised in an orphanage together, my dad was always around. So it's not like I didn't have my parents. I mean, I had my dad, my stepmom, my mom, and my stepdad, who's still part of it's amazing how, but what I always saw of my mom, and as I got older, I was like, Mom, there were times that you were pretty poor and we didn't even know it. It's amazing how we as parents can disguise things that kids see later on. But as you mentioned, not get lost in all of that.
Yes.
How do you pull that out of a mother and saying, let's remember who you are. You have value as an individual. You just happen to be a mother.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you pull that out of a mother?
Well, it's not easy, because as moms, we want to put on the brave face and the happy face and the hardworking face, and sometimes we forget to take care of who we are. And that is something that my granny has been telling me ever since I started having children and I left my job to stay at home with them. She was like, don't forget Sheila. Don't forget Sheila. And it took me a really long time to really understand what she was trying to encourage me to do, was that I'm a fully formed human being, and then God allowed us to have these babies, and that didn't change anything about who I was and what God was calling me to do. And I think as moms, if we really spend time thinking about where God is calling us, what gifts has He given us, and peeling those layers back and saying, okay, what did you enjoy to do or enjoy doing before you were a mother? And then how can you see that working within your motherhood? They don't have to be compartmentalized. You can figure out ways to do all of that together. So like I get to teach classes sometimes from my bedroom. My husband helped me set up just kind of a little mini studio, and I get to do classes, and my daughters will peek in and they'll pop into the little Zoom calls. And so they get to see me do that. Absolutely. But not just working, but using the gifts that God has given me to help other women. And so they get to see me living that out, not just praying that God would use me, but actually following it when He prompts me to move in that direction.
One of the things, that and this was true for me when my kids were younger and I went through a divorce, and that let me get my kids through this stage and then I'll do this. It's, they were always first. And I'm sure you hear mothers say, well, I want to wait until my kids start school before I do anything. Is that, but do they have to wait, or can you help them bring it out even before? Like, well, let me wait. And then sometimes that's when we really get lost in ourselves, because then the kids go to school and it's like, well, what do I do now?
Yes, So this is all part of, life coaching is all part of, mental health and finding that satisfaction with your life, and also finding that fulfillment in who you are as a child of God.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, well, I'll start eating healthy as soon as the kids go to school. And not to convict you,
I definitely, I look like Pillsbury Doughboy in this TV3 uniform.
But it's almost like putting all of that on pause. I'm going to put all of my health on pause until my children are in school.
Right, and we can't do that.
No, and I can help anyone at any stage. I've worked with empty nesters and, women of, that have little bitty ones and all ages, and I'm even getting to work with some middle schoolers.
Yeah.
So all of these techniques that I use with my clients or in my classes are all about helping people look at their circumstances and figuring out how they can get through them in the way that they are proud of. Yeah. And so when, like the example of someone waiting for their children to go to school, well, there's no harm in incrementally just working on whatever it is that you want to work on. And then if you have more time, when they are going to school, that's great too. But it doesn't take a ton of time to just think about where you would like to be so that you can enjoy your life more.
You're dealing with empty nesters. You're not there yet. And I'm sure as parents, we always think, gosh, this time's going by. How old are your children?
10, 7, and 5.
And it seems like yesterday you were just having a 5-year-old, or yesterday having a 10-year-old. I mean, it goes by so fast. And my oldest two stuck around here, so I get to see them. But my youngest, when he left, he went 5 hours away, 4.5, 5 hours away to college. And man, that really bothered me. I mean, I didn't know what to do. He's not, the weekend, I mean, whoa. How do you, since you haven't gone through the empty nesting yet, how is it? Because I'm sure it's easier to deal with, because you're a mother, you're dealing with other mothers, maybe going through the same thing you are. How is it to deal with somebody that is going through something that you haven't gone through yet?
Well, that's a very good question. And part of my training, because I'm a certified life coach, is I went through some training that allowed me to coach anyone on anything.
Right.
So I do prefer to work with women who are mothers, simply because that's just my passion.
Right.
But I can coach anyone on anything, and we can do that because the primary skill in coaching is just asking really good questions. Just like in your profession, is, okay, well, what life do you want to have? Who do you need to become to make that a reality? What obstacles are you facing that we can find solutions to? So it's really just asking questions to help people kind of have these light bulb moments of going, oh, well, that's where I would like to be.
That's got to be probably the best part of your job, when you see those light bulb moments.
Absolutely. It's a very good feeling when someone's like, oh, or when I don't even have to ask a question, and simply because we're holding space, because they have an appointment with me for an entire hour, and they come and they talk, and within their own dialogue,
they figure it out themselves.
Figure it out.
So let's go back to your light bulb moment. Where you were like, all right, honey, were you still down in Texas, or did you come up here? When you had that moment saying, I think I want to be a life coach and I want to help women. What did your husband say about it, the kids? I mean, tell me about where were you at?
Sure. Well, I was listening to all of these podcasts.
That's right.
And then I found myself playing coach with my friends. So they would talk to me and I'd be like, how does that make you feel? And I was asking them all of these questions, and then just some circumstances in our personal life changed, and there was an opportunity for me to have another career, but I knew that I wanted to maintain staying at home the majority of the time. I wanted to maintain our homeschool, and I thought, I've listened to hours and hours of coaching. I really think I can do it.
Right.
And so my husband was like, go for it. And so I went to school and got my certification, and my friends were incredibly supportive and let me practice on them when I was horrible and didn't really know what to say, and I was nervous, and folks at my church helped me out quite a bit. And then through all of that, it just helped me formulate, kind of this wonderful goulash of, okay, well, I love this set of people, and this is what I would like to contribute.
This was your niche.
Yeah, absolutely. So, instead of being like, oh, okay, I'm a life coach for everybody, it just kind of kept getting smaller and smaller.
And I think that what makes it more effective. I mean, that you found your niche of who you were helping out. So obviously support from your husband. What type of education and how much did the podcast that you were listening to when you were going to your certification, like, I already know that answer because, I listened to so-and-so.
Well, definitely having the background of listening to that and just hearing how coaching worked and how it worked on me. I mean, that really was the biggest seller for me, is that I listened to these podcasts and it really helped me. It helped me, not wallow in some issues and circumstances that were going on. It helped me go, okay, I'm hurt, but here's how I can get through it. And no one needs to necessarily apologize, because not all the time people apologize for certain things. But how do we not get stuck? And how can we grow out of these? And so it was really my healing and growth that was the biggest seller for me. And then it was just a matter of finding a school that that I liked and that I wanted to go to, and then learning how to do that, how to listen. How to really hear.
Listening.
Absolutely. And kind of, how sometimes we can read between the lines. It's like listening between the lines. What's not being said? And then just getting to know my clients and working with people. And I love to do one-on-one coaching, and it's all over the phone, which is really neat because my school was on the phone. And at first I didn't really understand why, but it's kind of hard to sit and listen sometimes, especially when we can be very distracted and, we want to doodle or we want to do whatever while we're on the phone. But I had to sit and listen and really practice being a good listener. And so my one-on-one clients, we just meet over the phone, not on Zoom, so we're not distracted by what's going on in the background or anything like that. And then I love to do classes. That's probably my favorite, is going and offering classes.
And now, how big is the class sizes that you offer?
Well, right now, I'd like to keep it 10 and under.
Oh, wow.
And that way, I can really get to know the people.
Each individual.
Yes, I've been given a wonderful opportunity to work with the young ladies at the community Christian school once a week, and we call it Godly Girls. And I get to go and I bring a lesson that ties in, scripture with just kind of, I call it social skills, but a lot of it is etiquette. So this past week we talked about not interrupting. And we found a proverb, and it said, like, you're foolish if you interrupt before you hear a person's complete answer. And then we talked about how we can be good listeners. And so the goal is to help these young ladies to embrace these scriptures and this skill so that it sets them up to succeed later on in life.
It's funny you say that about listening. I've had people, and we talked about this before we went on the air, of saying, well, do you have a list of questions that you're going to ask? And I find that so informal, because if I'm asking you first question, then I'm waiting for you to be done, not really investing in anything that you have to say, because as you mentioned earlier, listening is a part of investing in someone when you're listening to what they have to say. And when I worked in the mental health field, one of the things that I wish that I could just say this when they ask, what kind of therapeutic approach that you have with the client, and I wish I could have just put, I just listen. Active listening, and not have to go, well, here's what they said, that, without writing a huge narrative. I just listened for 2 hours. I didn't say a word, I just listened. I think that when you know that somebody's listening to you, boy, you feel valued. You feel valued. Who were the people when you were listening to the podcast that you found to be the most valuable to you in your education and the people in the podcast?
Well, I love one that's called Better Than Happy by Jody Moore.
Oh, wow.
And I would recommend it to anyone. She is a phenomenal woman, and she really gets into what women can be going through, especially women of faith, when we have all of these feelings, just like earlier we talked about moms, like we feel like we need to have it all together. We feel like we need to put on a happy face. We feel like we need to be strong. When sometimes we don't feel strong or happy or are putting on.
And it's okay.
Exactly. And that's what I like to encourage moms is, a question that I ask them is, well, what's the harm in showing your kid that you're kind of sad today? What's the harm in being yourself? And what can these kids learn? Just this morning, I was talking to a client who has a chronic illness, and she was having a really hard time finding the silver lining. And I said, well, I was like, aren't you showing your kiddos that how they take care of their body is incredibly important because they just get one. So even though she has young kids and they don't fully understand the scope of what she's going through, they do understand that watching their mom take good care of herself, getting her rest. Absolutely. And it's just a matter of having that conversation of someone having those questions to ask that get her thinking as well. Because sometimes it's really hard to find the silver lining. It's hard to find any good in anything, and we can just get stuck. We can get very, very stuck in disappointment, in negativity, in shame. And if we get stuck there, then we're not growing. And that's why I focus on growth. So whether you're growing an inch or a mile in a week, growth is growth. And so that's what I like to focus on with my clients is let's do some growth. Let's get out of that negative space because that's holding you back.
Believe I have. Yes, I try to find the silver lining in everything. It's very difficult at times, but as I've gotten older, when I hit 50, I realized that it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to go through, but to not let it hold me down, though. Recognize that, you don't give it give it less power. So we're believe it or not, we're cutting it close. And I want to make sure that we talk about everything that you want to talk about because the services that you provide are very, very important and very, very valuable. How does someone get a hold of you and to utilize your services?
Okay, well, that would be great. If anyone is interested or any church is interested in having me come to teach a class or a school, I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, and they're both Sheila Hupp Growth Coach, and so they can find me there, or my website has a contact page, which is sheilahupp.com, and they can reach out to me, and I will get back with them and see what we can put together. I may already have something created, or I'm always willing to kind of cook up something original for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been doing this how long now?
A couple of years.
So doing it a couple of years, this is obviously something you're going to retire at.
That would be great. It would be nice because it's a lot of fun.
Now, I guess the question I have is that when you're at home with your husband, do you look at him and go, honey, I think you need to do that. Did you do any life coaching on him?
Well, I do. When he's having a hard time, I do try to ask him questions, and he doesn't really prefer that. I think people want to be coached when they say, I need you to coach me. So I think it's important when people are in this role or in like a counseling role or a pastoral role to just be the husband sometimes, be the wife.
You just if you need me, I'm there.
Exactly.
And I think that's the most important thing is to let people know that you are available when needed.
Yes.
And also too, as a life coach, I'm sure people look at you like, oh, Sheila's got it all together. She probably never ever has any moments where she's wanting to pull her hair out. She's got it all together.
Yeah, that's what one of my good girlfriends just told me the other day. She's like, are you ever grumpy? And I was like, absolutely.
Your husband's back. Yes!
Exactly, right? Like, ask my kids.
The kids are like,
yes, absolutely. No, oh my goodness gracious. Yes, and that's why I enjoy this so much is because it helps me give myself a ton of grace. And I can say, you know what? I'm just having a bad day or a bad moment, and this isn't going to last forever.
It's okay, It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to be vulnerable. We're human beings. Nobody's perfect.
Exactly.
There was only one.
Exactly.
And we know who he is, and we try to strive to be him. But, I tell you, I always tell everybody, my mom used to always say, boy, that's enough to make a preacher cuss. And then when I became one, I realized, there's a lot of things that make, like driving behind people who drive slowly. That gets me every time people in my church make fun of that. They call it pulling a Ronnie. I pulled a Ronnie the other day. Somebody pulled out in front of me. It's terrible, but nobody's perfect, and you're helping people understand that to better their lives.
Absolutely. Embrace that imperfection. Don't try to fight against it.
One more time, how can we get a hold of you?
The best place is probably Facebook, Sheila Hupp Growth Coach, Instagram, Sheila Hupp Growth Coach, or SheilaHupp.com.
Right there, SheilaHupp.com. Check her out, Sheila Hupp on Facebook. Fabulous having you on this show.
You
It was
so
wonderful. I feel
much.
like I've learned so much, and I want to go out there and
Wonderful.
help people too. I think that's the
Awesome.
inspiration. You want to help people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. Sheila, God bless you.
Thank you
you
very
for having you on the
much.
show.
Thank
we'll
you.
see you next month on The Spot.